Revenge with Karen. I was the one who turned the damn lights on. Not metaphorically. Literally. Every weekday at 6:50 a.m. sharp, I unlocked the doors of that soulless concrete mausoleum they called a corporate headquarters, punched in my code, and flipped the master switch that brought the office to life. Fluorescents buzzing like flies, HVAC kicking into its wheezy morning wheeze, the printer spitting out the first daily digest before anyone's overpriced car even touched the parking lot. No one ever questioned how things were magically ready, just assumed the ghosts were loyal. By 7:05, the coffee was brewing, dark roast, extra strong, with the cinnamon stick trick that kept the CEO's acid reflux from flaring. I knew that because I was the one who noticed when he tossed an entire earnings binder into the recycling bin after a heartburn attack in 2018. He never thanked me, but he always nodded toward the break room and muttered, "Ah, someone up there likes us." Sure, pal, someone. That same someone also printed out the morning market snapshot, the one Bryce would later claim came from his daily sync with New York, slid it into color-coded folders before 7:30. That someone also calibrated the dashboards, unlocked the vendor Dropbox room, tested the security fob logs, checked the shared drive backups, refilled the fridge with the weird cucumber seltzers legal liked, and set up the projector in Conference B for whatever self-important update the C-suite needed to feel relevant that week. That someone was me. Hi, I'm Emily. Senior Ops Coordinator, technically. That's just a title. My real job, being the glue in a building full of cardboard cutouts with LinkedIn bios and zero backbone. Now, before I keep going, do me one favor. If you're the kind of person who doesn't hit subscribe because you're just passing through, take a second. Really. It helps the team that brings you these stories. And I promise, we've got more office justice than a microwave lunch thief getting caught on camera. If you've ever been the one holding everything together while everyone else played executive dress up, hit like. You've earned it. Anyway, back to the ghost shift. No one told me to come in early. It wasn't in the employee handbook or some bootlicking company value scroll taped next to the HR printer. I did it because things needed to be done, and it turns out if you quietly fix enough problems before people notice them, decide they never existed in the first place, you'd be amazed how many million-dollar meetings are saved by someone wiping a whiteboard clean at 7:12 a.m., or how many client decks land right because someone remembered Cheryl in compliance likes Times New Roman 12 and not Calibri 11. That someone? Yeah, you get it. My mornings were symphonies of invisible labor. Move this file, flag that number, shift this chair 3 inches so the projector beam doesn't hit the CEO's bald spot just right. Tiny things, dumb things, critical things. I had a folder on the shared drive, password protected and unlabeled. Inside, my checklist. I called it Skyfall. Not because I'm a Bond fan, but because if I ever stopped doing those tasks, the sky would in fact fall. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for a raise every time I saved a meeting or prevented a fire drill. I liked the calm, the control, the early hours when the office was mine and the vending machine didn't yet smell like burnt popcorn and regret. But like all good systems, mine depended on one thing, being left alone. That changed the day Bryce walked in. Corporate sent him down like a gift-trapped migraine, some mid-tier manager with nice shoes and a resume padded with buzzwords and overconfident mediocrity. He had that clean-shaven smugness, like a guy who'd never used a copier but gave copier advice anyway. First week, I stayed out of his way. I didn't need him. He didn't even know what I did. As long as he didn't touch anything, the machine kept running. But on day 4, he touched it, and everything changed. Bryce had the kind of walk that told you he'd never changed a toner cartridge in his life. Chest out, arms swinging just a little too wide like he was parting the Red Sea of underlings who didn't ask how he liked his coffee. Spoiler, oat milk, no foam, splash of agave. Because of course it was. He showed up Monday morning like he was shooting a promo for himself. Loud voice, louder cologne, designer watch that looked too new, like it hadn't earned the right to tick. Some guys walk into a building and learn the culture. Bryce walked in like he was there to rebrand it. Day 1, he hosted an alignment meeting where he used the phrase synergize momentum so many times I started checking for hidden cameras. Day 2, he wanted to refresh the vibes in the break room by removing the only working microwave. Day 3, he asked why the dashboards didn't have a share to Instagram feature. That's when I realized this wasn't a manager. This was a sentient hashtag. Still, I kept my head down. Let him bark. Let him rearrange his ergonomic chair 8 times and critique the printer tray orientation like it was ruining morale. Let him take credit for the pre-7 a.m. report packets that magically showed up in his inbox. But on day 4, he decided I was the problem. I was restocking paper in the supply cabinet, something no one does but everyone relies on, when I heard the shuffle of expensive shoes behind me. I turned, and there he was, leaning in the doorway with that HR polished smile, the kind that always precedes condescension wrapped in compliments. "Hey, Emily," he said, voice syrupy and performative. "Can we chat in my office for a sec?" "Sure, Bryce. Let me just finish replenishing the lifeblood of your quarterly review printouts." I followed him in. He didn't offer a seat, just leaned against the desk like a motivational speaker in a discount seminar. "So," he began, "few folks have mentioned you come in pretty early." I blinked. "Yes," he gave a laugh. "Not a real one of those I'm about to say something offensive, but let's pretend it's charming chuckles. Look, you're clearly dedicated, which is great. But showing up at dawn, it kinda makes the rest of us look bad." He paused like he expected me to apologize. I didn't. "Noted," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Just trying to maintain a team balance, you know," he added, smoothing a wrinkle in his already ironed shirt. "Let's maybe stick to arriving at 9 with the rest of the crew. Consistency is key." There it was, the condescending pat on the head, like I'd been a good girl, but now it was time to stop overachieving and start playing office politics like a team player. I smiled. "Half, no teeth. You're right." He seemed satisfied, like he'd solved the Rubik's Cube of leadership. I turned and walked out before the smile collapsed into something feral. "You're right," 2 words, polished on the outside, acid underneath. What I wanted to say was, you wouldn't last a week if I actually showed up at 9. But that wasn't my style. I wasn't loud, I was efficient. And efficiency doesn't make threats, it makes spreadsheets. Quiet, damning spreadsheets. So I did what I always do, I adapted. But not the way he expected. Because here's the thing about routines, Bryce, you don't notice them until they're gone. And the second mine vanished, the building that ran like a Rolex, it started ticking like a Dollar Tree watch with a dead battery and ketchup on the lens. He wanted consistency. He was about to get it. And the rest of them were about to realize just how much of their comfort was built on the back of the woman they all ignored. 9 o'clock sharp. Nothing more, nothing less. I parked my car at 8:52 a.m. It felt strange, unnerving even, sitting in the lot while the sun was already high enough to make the pavement sweat. Normally by then, I'd have already cleared 2 dashboards, set up the day's compliance flags, and brewed 2 pots of coffee. One for the office and one strictly for legal, who liked it burnt and bitter like their souls. But not that day. That day, I sat in my car with the AC humming, sipping coffee I'd made at home, watching the lobby doors through the windshield like they might implode without me. They didn't, of course, but something else did. At exactly 8:59:00 a.m., I stepped out of my car. The sun hit me like a spotlight. My badge clipped neatly to my collar, bag slung over one shoulder, heels clicking with the rhythm of compliance. Every movement intentional, deliberate, robotic in its precision. I walked through the main entrance, past the receptionist's desk still dark, the air faintly stale like it hadn't been circulated properly yet. Because it hadn't. Because the HVAC override I usually triggered at 6:51, untouched. The hallway lights flickered in that dull yellow buzz, half of them still warming up. The printer flashed a red error code, no paper. The coffee machine blinked at me like a neglected child. The conference room door stood open, chairs still askew from yesterday's huddle. Didn't fix any of it. Instead, I took the long route to my desk, weaving through the quiet office with the slow, gliding steps of someone entirely unbothered. The kind of walk people use in noir films before they light a match off their thumbnail and expose the killer. Bryce's door creaked open as I passed. He stepped out, holding a to-go coffee cup that had definitely not been brewed in-house. "Welcome to the land of the living," he said, grinning like a dad trying to be cool at a wedding. I paused mid-step, raised an eyebrow, and offered him the driest smile known to mankind. Following your lead, I said, and I meant it. That was the game now. No shortcuts, no overtime, no early unlocks, coffee calibrations, or unsung heroics. If it wasn't in my job description, it didn't exist. I slid into my chair, powered on my computer, and waited the full 90 seconds for the ancient desktop to boot, something I usually had done before most people brushed their teeth. No early dashboards. No folders delivered to Bryce's inbox before his morning oatmeal. The vendor digest that usually sat, warm and ready in the boardroom, didn't even exist. I didn't open Skyfall, not until well after 9:10. And still, I smiled, because this wasn't rebellion. This was obedience. Perfect, gleaming, weaponized obedience, kind you could frame and hang in HR if you needed to prove your innocence. Bryce passed by my desk around 9:30, holding a croissant and looking like a man who believed the world rotated around his Slack notifications. Let me know if you get the weekly briefs ready earlier, he said casually, tossing a wink over his shoulder. I didn't respond, because I wouldn't be getting them ready earlier. In fact, they wouldn't be ready at all, not in the way he was used to, because Bryce didn't understand the machinery. He didn't know that the weekly brief was a Frankenstein made of 6 pre-dawn downloads, 3 updated macros, and a locked folder on our shared drive that only I had the key to. He thought it arrived like magic. That was his mistake, and I wasn't in the mood to correct him. By noon, the floor started to shift. Not physically, but emotionally. The usual flow of office life, coffee in hand, numbers reviewed, soft chatter by the kitchenette, felt off. You could smell it in the air, like something had gone slightly sour. The director of ops circled my desk twice before realizing the comparative dashboard hadn't been updated. The assistant to the CFO peeked into the boardroom and frowned at the absence of the big binder. I just kept typing, doing exactly what I was asked. No more, no less. That's the thing about being the invisible engine. The moment you stop humming, people finally start to notice the silence. But by then, it's already too late. Monday started with silence. The kind of silence you don't notice until it overstays its welcome. Normally, the boardroom hummed with pre-meeting rustle by 8:45 a.m., executives leafing through stapled packets I used to prepare at dawn, mumbling about vendor volatility while sipping lukewarm coffee brewed by yours truly. But this Monday, just confusion. A mild, itchy sort of confusion, like someone swapped their regular socks for wool ones without asking. The market digest wasn't there. No folders, no color-coded highlights, no comforting phrase as of 6:45 a.m. See Appendix C at the top right corner of the printout. Just a long, polished table with empty placemats and a flickering projector that no one knew how to adjust. Bryce stood there fidgeting with the HDMI cable, tending not to notice the looks circling the room like vultures on a lazy thermal. He tried to wing it, threw some buzzwords at the wall, opened a half-loaded spreadsheet on his laptop, and tried to buy time by saying things like, "Let's focus on the macro picture, and Q4 resilience is all about posture." Meanwhile, the CFO leaned toward the VP of sales and whispered something behind his hand. Probably, where the hell is the digest? I was at my desk. Quiet, posed, typing a policy note like the sky wasn't falling just down the hall. That was the first crack. Tuesday brought another. It started in the break room, oddly enough. I overheard it while fixing a jam in the printer I wasn't supposed to touch anymore. The director of ops, Mr. Unflappable Spreadsheet himself, was barking at an assistant so loudly it echoed into the corridor. "I needed that shipment flag yesterday," he snapped. "What were you even doing this morning?" Poor kid stammered something about not seeing the alert until 9:20. And that's when it clicked. He was talking about my 7:15 a.m. update, the one I stopped sending. Because, I was arriving at 8:59 now. As instructed. The director didn't look convinced. His tone dropped a degree colder. If you can't spot a timing issue on a rolling ledger, maybe this isn't the right department for you. The kid looked like he just swallowed a thumbtack. I went back to my desk, and without a word, pulled out the small black moleskine notebook I kept tucked beneath the bottom drawer. On the first page, I wrote in neat block letters, invisible tasks. Underneath, I started listing 7:15 a.m. shipment forecast updates, market digest print and prep, vendor access fob activation, pre-8 a.m. entries, preheating conference B projector, 6:55 a.m., printer paper refill weekly, unlogged, CEO's binder prep Tuesdays plus Thursdays, coffee machine descaling first of month. Each one was something I'd done quietly, consistently, without credit. Each one had gone undone now, and the tremors were spreading like cracks through drywall. Later that same afternoon, I got an email from HR. Subject line, vendor access concern Monday, 8:00 a.m. incident. Apparently, the water delivery service had shown up at 8:03 to a locked building. It had 12 minutes, then left. They'd rescheduled for Wednesday, and someone in facilities had escalated a potential SLA breach. Bryce had CC'd me on his response, which said, and I quote, "Could we confirm who's responsible for early access coordination?" I didn't reply. Instead, I added a bullet in my notebook. Unlock main doors before 8:00 a.m. for vendors, mon/wed recurring. That night, as I walked to my car, I passed the janitor, Sam, gave me a knowing nod, then jerked his chin toward the main lobby. "Strange, ain't it?" he said. "Used to smell like coffee in there by 7. Now it just smells sad." I smiled. "Change of schedule," I said. He didn't ask. Wednesday would bring more fallout. But Tuesday night, I went to bed knowing one thing for sure. The structure was groaning. They just hadn't realized yet that the load-bearing column was me. By Wednesday morning, Bryce had started doing something I hadn't seen him do since he arrived. Listening. Not well, mind you. But you could tell from the way his laugh got tighter, the way his collar stayed tugged at just a little too often, that his little cruise control fantasy was running into turbulence. The glow-up manager vibe, cracking. Fast. It started with him hovering around the front desk like a tourist looking for a gate number. He poked his head into different departments with that artificially casual tone managers use when they're about to delegate blame disguised as a brainstorm. "Hey," he asked the admin in facilities, "just wondering, who usually prints those digest things for the boardroom?" She blinked. I think Emily." Later, I overheard him near the vending machines, pretending to make small talk with the finance coordinator while shaking an energy drink. Know those vendor sheets that used to show up in ops by 8:15? Just trying to track who normally sends those. The coordinator shrugged. Emily always handled that. Another crack. It was like watching someone realize the house he bought came without plumbing. He started circling my desk more often, pretending to look for a pen or commenting on the weather like we shared a balcony and a divorce. And then came the conversation. Caught me while I was updating the shared task calendar, something he never noticed before. His tone was cheerful, strained, like he was trying to charm a possum out of a trap. "Emily, hey, quick sec." I stood, calm, folder still in hand. He motioned toward his office like it was a throne room, then leaned against his desk with a water bottle and a forced grin. That fake casual posture again. Always the lean, never the sit. "So I've been hearing some chatter, nothing bad." Started waving his hand like he was clearing smoke. "Just stuff about early routines, things not being where they used to be." "Totally normal after transitions, right?" I nodded. Neutral, let him squirm. He continued, "Would love for you to be a little more proactive, you know? Just really take initiative. Be that early riser again like you used to." His words dangled in the air like unpaid invoices. I smiled, slow. "Controlled, of course," I said. "Just let me know if anything's in my scope." He blinked. Probably expected me to apologize, maybe even grovel a bit. Instead, he got polite disassociation served on dry toast. He coughed. "Right? Well, I'm sure you know what's needed." I tilted my head. "I'm sure you'll tell me." His face twitched, just a flicker, but I caught it. That's the thing about people like Bryce. They live in PowerPoint slides and coffee-stained buzzwords. They don't understand quiet resistance. They think control comes from tone and meetings, not from the muscle memory of someone who's kept a ship running long before they ever showed up with their shiny job title. I left his office without another word. Back at my desk, I opened my notebook and added a new column. Inquiries noted. Under it, I jotted. Market digest missing asked admin, vendor tracker delay pinged finance, compliance sheet glitch cornered intern, dashboard lag tried blaming Sam from IT. Sam laughed. He was getting desperate. Not panicked yet, but approaching that fragile, glassy-eyed stage where you realize your parachute might be sewn from napkins. And the best part? I hadn't broken a single rule. I hadn't skipped a task. I hadn't even raised my voice. I was, in every way that mattered, the perfect employee, just no longer theirs to lean on. The next morning, I walked in at 9:01. Bryce was already pacing in the hallway, tapping his phone like it owed him rent. He nodded at me, forced a grin again. I nodded back. Nothing more, he needed me. But now, he'd have to ask. Wednesday morning hit like a snapped cable in an elevator shaft, sudden, loud, and very, very hard. At 8:17 a.m., I was still in my kitchen, buttering toast and listening to an old Motown playlist while the coffee finished brewing. I wasn't thinking about the vendor comparison sheet. Not because I didn't care, but because, per our freshly minted performance culture, it wasn't my job anymore to care before 9 o'clock. By 8:22, I had a text from a colleague. Heads up, the CEO's here, early. Looks pissed. I took another bite of toast. It wasn't until 9:06, walking in through the front doors with my badge flashing green like a polite threat, that I saw the signs of impact. Boardroom blinds were still half drawn. The main printer had 3 error messages flashing in sequence, like a doomsday countdown. And Bryce looked like a man halfway through a lie and already regretting the setup. He was standing in the hallway outside the boardroom, one hand gripping a coffee cup like it might grant him immunity, the other gesturing wildly at Connor, the poor intern from marketing who had the misfortune of owning a functioning pair of legs, said the vendor file was uploaded last night. Bryce hissed, trying to keep his voice low and failing. Connor stammered. I wasn't sure which file it was, and the folder didn't have. The CEO asked me point blank where the Q3, Q4 cross sheet was. You know what I gave him? A shrug and a spreadsheet with missing cells, Connor. I walked past like a breeze through a burning room. No comment, no acknowledgement, just precision. At my desk, I logged in, took a sip of my travel mug coffee, and opened my inbox. 15 new messages, 5 of them from finance, 3 from ops, 1 from the CEO's executive assistant, flagged urgent. Subject line, urgent dashboards not refreshed. Apparently, they'd been using the Monday morning dashboards all week because no one knew that the numbers updated daily, because I had updated them daily. At 7 o'clock a.m., before the server hit its memory cap, before the sales numbers locked into view. Funny that I didn't respond right away. Instead, I opened a new email, composed it calmly, sent it to Bryce, CCing the relevant directors, department heads, and a few handpicked names I knew read everything even if they never replied. Subject, schedule alignment confirmation body. Hi team, just confirming that per recent leadership guidance, I've adjusted my start time to 9 o'clock a.m. to maintain consistency with team standards. If any priority items require action prior to that time, feel free to escalate or reassign accordingly. Happy to revisit this approach if priorities shift. Best, Emily, no snark, no sharp edges, just the corporate equivalent of a scalpel dipped in lavender oil. 5 minutes later, I got a ping from the finance director. No subject, just a single sentence. Wait, we're doing all the dashboard refreshes. I replied, since 2012. He didn't answer. But at 9:31, I saw him in Bryce's office, door closed, faces tight. I opened my notebook. Added 2 entries under consequences observed, CEO briefing, missing sheet finance team, dashboard outage, internal panic. I didn't smile, not because I wasn't satisfied, but because satisfaction implies it was ever personal. It wasn't. It was structural. I didn't stop doing my job. I just started doing exactly what they asked. And when you take a keystone out of an archway, the rest isn't sabotage. It's gravity. By noon, operations had 3 fires, compliance had no briefing doc, and someone from legal came sniffing around asking who usually prepped the weekly partner review packet. By 3 o'clock p.m., Bryce sent out an all-staff email titled Early Process Optimization Touchpoints. I didn't even open it. He was trying to name the cracks. But naming cracks doesn't fix them, especially not when you were the one who told the cement to clock in at 9. Thursday morning, my phone lit up at 7:20 a.m. The screen glared Bryce in bold, unwelcome letters. I watched it vibrate once, twice, then fall still. No voicemail. Just a silent, Unanswered call left to hang in the pre-dawn quiet of my kitchen. I was halfway through a second cup of coffee and slicing strawberries onto oatmeal like a woman who had never once been screamed at over a quarterly dashboard refresh. The phone buzzed again at 7:23, then 7:25, then 7:29. He was calling in waves, like a man clinging to a lifeline he didn't know was made of dental floss. I turned the ringer off and set the phone face down. At 8:58, I arrived at the office, cool and silent as always. The front doors were already cracked open. Facilities must have finally given up and reprogrammed the lock timer I used to override manually. Inside, the lights were harsh and unflattering, the kind of lighting that makes everything look like it's someone else's fault. Bryce was waiting in the hallway, red in the face, and trying not to look panicked. His shirt collar was wrinkled. His usual smug smirk had been replaced by something far more useful. Fear, where the hell are the reports? He barked as soon as he saw me. I blinked, genuinely, which reports? He stared like I'd just asked if we were still using computers at this company. The morning reports, Emily. The vendor pull sheets, the dashboard syncs, the goddamn digest. The things that go out before the day starts. You know those? I tilted my head slightly, tending to search the air for an answer. You mean the ones I used to prep before 7 a.m., before I was asked to arrive at 9, in the interest of consistency? He clenched his jaw. I kept my voice even, soft enough to be professional, but sharp enough to cut. I follow the documented responsibilities, Bryce. If expectations have changed, I'd be happy to discuss them in a written directive. He looked like he wanted to slam his head into a copier. Just then, VP of Business Strategy Andrea walked past. She didn't say a word, but her eyes did a full sweep of the scene. Bryce's clenched fists, my calm face, the distinct tension that crackled in the air like a broken outlet. She paused, eyebrow lifted, and then she kept walking. But that was a problem. Because Andrea didn't raise her brow for office gossip. She raised it for legal risk. Bryce exhaled hard and ran a hand through his hair. Look, I just need you to step up. This whole place is sliding and I cut him off gently. Bryce, I've been stepping up for 14 years, quietly, reliably, without needing a title or a thank you bagel. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to threaten. I just turned, walked to my desk, sat down with the same calm I'd once used to rebuild a client database from scratch after its routine update deleted 2 years of records. I booted up, opened my inbox, and saw 7 new messages flagged urgent. 3 were from Bryce, 2 from legal, 1 from the CEO's assistant, and just one, was from Andrea. Subject line, let's chat. I opened my notebook. Under backlash events, I added, CEO briefing missed, Bryce meltdown in hallway. EP witnessed escalation. Let's chat from strategy VP. I underlined the last one. Twice. Because Bryce didn't know it yet, but the temperature was shifting. And when people like Andrea start paying attention, that's when the real knives come out. Thursday, 5:59 p.m., I stood at the threshold of my apartment like a surgeon scrubbing out after a 14-hour operation. No applause, no flowers. Just the slow satisfaction of a job done clean, quiet, by the book. I placed my work phone on the counter and watched the second hand crawl toward the top of the hour. 6:00 p.m. sharp. I powered it off. Not silenced, not do not disturb, off, a full surgical shutdown. Because nothing in my job description required 24/7 availability. And after 14 years of unpaid overtime disguised as loyalty, I'd finally found the off switch. Friday morning was the first time in over a decade I didn't wake up thinking about bandwidth caps or compliance trackers. Instead, I brewed a fresh cup of coffee. French press. No rush. I rolled out a yoga mat I hadn't touched since 2014 and spent 20 gentle, wobbly minutes stretching joints I forgot I owned. My cat watched, silently judging. By 8:50 a.m., I was showered, dressed, and calmly slicing a banana onto oatmeal. No panic, no email pings, no back-of-the-mind dread whispering about dashboards. At 9:01 a.m., I turned my work phone back on. It took a full minute to load, and then chaos, 44 missed calls. I blinked, thought it was a glitch. But no, real numbers. Bryce's name appeared over and over like a slot machine stuck on lose. I opened my voicemail. The first three were unintelligible babble. He was either mid-panic or mid-sprint. Fourth started with him snapping at someone in the background. "Just print it yourself, Karen." Followed by, "Emily, I really need you to call me. The vendor report is it's just gone." I didn't call back. I opened my inbox next. 17 emails, all between 6:12 a.m. and 8:43 a.m. Bryce's name headlined most, but what made me pause wasn't him, it was who he CC'd. Half the org, legal, HR, finance, ops, even the CEO's executive assistant. Subject lines ranged from urgent missing compliance brief to critical dashboard access issues and the ever-desperate "can someone reach Emily?" Apparently, the dashboard had crashed overnight during an update Bryce initiated himself, against protocol, of course. The compliance brief hadn't been submitted, which triggered an automatic audit flag. The vendor comparison files were overwritten in the shared drive. And no one, not one soul, knew how to retrieve the archive version because no one knew the access path. Except me. Oh, and the kicker. The CEO himself had emailed me at 7:44 a.m. Subject, "Please advise, body. Emily, we're missing the weekly brief. Bryce said you're on a new schedule. Can you clarify, JD?" I took a long sip of my coffee. Let the warmth settle. Then I placed the mug down gently and opened a blank email. To CEO CC, Bryce, Andrea, VP, HR Director. Subject. Please advise, hi JD. As per direction received from Bryce last week, I've been aligning my schedule to begin at 9:00 a.m. to maintain team consistency. If this no longer reflects current priorities, happy to adjust accordingly once expectations are clarified in writing. In the meantime, please let me know which brief you'd like recreated, and I'll work from the most recent backup. Best, Emily. It was the corporate equivalent of smiling through a sniper scope. At 9:22 a.m., I got a reply, not from the CEO, but from Andrea. 2 words, "Let's meet." I didn't even have to underline it this time. I already knew. The ghost had stepped into the light. And Bryce. He was about to find out what it feels like when the building forgets your name. The invitation came through at 1:42 p.m. Subject, emergency sync metrics disruption/executive briefing location. Boardroom attendees. Bryce Dalton, Emily Tran, Director of Finance, VP of Ops, CEO, Chairman. It didn't say crisis, but the timestamp, the names, and the lack of smiley face sign-offs told me everything I needed to know. I closed my laptop, stood, and took the small gray folder from my bottom drawer. Inside was one sheet. Just one. Document was printed on slightly yellowed paper, dated in the corner with my neat handwriting. First draft, March 3, 2009. I'd updated it every year since, like clockwork. I walked into boardroom at exactly 1:59 p.m. Bryce was already sweating under the fluorescent lights. His tie was loosened. His posture, usually a billboard of confidence, now looked like it had been hit by a semi. Across from him sat Andrea, arms crossed, CFO, 2 ops directors, the CEO, and at the far end of the long glass table, the chairman. "Ah, Emily," he said, nodding slightly. "Thanks for joining." I took the open seat beside the ops VP and placed the folder on the table, centered, unopened. The chairman steepled his fingers. "Bryce, let's go over this again." Bryce inhaled too quickly. "Right, yes, so. The morning metrics package. There's been disruption. Breakdown in workflow. Reassessing pipeline clarity. Who, the CEO interrupted flatly, prepares the metrics?" Bryce blinked. It's a combination of teams. Finance inputs, then ops, it's collaborative." Silence. Andrea tilted her head. "Interesting. Because I asked legal to pull email chains for the last decade, and they show one name consistently sending the final packet. One login accessing the Skyfall folder." She looked at me, then back at Bryce. "Guess who?" He licked his lips. "Look, I wasn't fully briefed on the historical processes. There's been a lot of legacy dependencies and informal handoffs. 14 years, the CFO said, cool as winter glass. Flawless delivery. No compliance flags, not one. Until this week, someone added from the far side of the table. All eyes turned to me. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I slid the folder forward and opened it. One page, titled Pre-9 a.m. Deliverables, 2009-2023. The document listed 26 recurring morning tasks, annotated with timeframes, dependencies, and cross-departmental impact summaries. Color-coded, Simple, elegant, quietly damning. I had prepared it every year, updated it every quarter. No one asked me to. I just did, because I gave a damn. The chairman leaned forward and scanned the page for all of 15 seconds. Looked at me. You've been doing all this? I nodded once. For how long? Since before Bryce graduated, I said softly. That got a chuckle from the ops director. The kind that slips out involuntarily, half admiration, half disbelief. Bryce tried to rally. If I could just clarify, there's been a lot of overlap in the transition. The chairman raised a hand. Calm, final. She's not the problem. Bryce's mouth stayed open, words trapped behind crumbling confidence. Chairman turned to me. Why didn't you ever push for credit? I shrugged. Didn't need it. I just wanted things to run right. He nodded slowly, then turned to the CEO. Let's talk about succession planning. We've clearly misplaced our foundation. The meeting adjourned shortly after that. No grand standing ovation, no slow clap, just respectful silence as I gathered my folder, nodded once, and left the room. In the hallway, Andrea caught up to me. Hell of a move, she said, eyes gleaming. It wasn't a move, I replied. It was maintenance. Behind us, the boardroom door closed on Bryce, who was now staring down the long road of HR reviews and performance audits. I didn't smile, but I felt something shift. The quiet gears that kept the company humming had finally been seen, and the woman who'd always kept the lights on, she just stepped into them. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.